She's great, you know, so, yeah. So it was something.
Let's say it's day one, you've read this interesting briefings, you don't know quite what's going on, you do see this technology, it's damned amazing. What is your job? What do they tell you you're supposed to do?
The bottom job is not to figure out how this thing works or, you know, let us know what this is, just can we make another one of these? So just let us know if you can.
Can we duplicate
the
technology?
Can we duplicate it? Like it doesn't have to be exact, but find out how this thing works. If we need to make something that's bigger or do it but we want more of these things and just do it right now. So that was it.
And the answer is, can we? I mean, can we?
No.
No.
No. No. No. No, we're just not even in the same ballpark.
Is it because of materials, or we just don't understand?
Yeah, it's both. Look, this is like dropping off an iPhone in the wagon train days and saying, we're going to need more of these. You know?
Yeah. Did you ask anybody, hey, where do we get these? Where did these come from?
No, I really did. There was so much other stuff that was flooding my brain that was just amazing, and you know, I was so excited to be there. I didn't care where the thing came from. You know, it was beginning to trickle into my mind. Boy, this is maybe what, you know, flying saucer crashed in South Africa or something, and we got it, and we're taking it apart. This is great.
You eventually saw all of them, or you saw glimpses?
Well, when I looked through the doors, I could see.
As far as you could tell, they didn't look like they'd been in a crash. Right?
Well, there's one. There's one. And I mentioned this to you a long time ago, and I never added this one thing, which I'll add now. There was one, like I said, that had been shot with a projectile, and I know for a fact it came out of the water. That's all I know.
You know it for a fact because that's what you were told?
Yeah, that it came out of the water.
So it had a great big projectile, like a howitzer shell or something, right?
It was about, it's hard to judge from distances, you know, like from here to the exit sign, how big is that? But I'm guessing it was, maybe a 9-inch diameter hole.
The sport model, no dents, no scrapes.
No, it looked like it came right out of the showroom.
And it looked like the Billy Meyer beam ship.
Yeah, from the pictures I've seen of the Billy Meyer one, which, you know, looked fake to me, but no, there it is.
I'm sure the Billy Meyer people are happy about that, but I mean, you know, there's a lot of people don't take that case seriously, and
it's either the most amazing coincidence on the face of the earth, or something really did happen to that guy, Billy Meyer.
So the sport model, you called it. You had names for all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me some other names.
Well, there's one that looked like the top hat, and one was obviously a Jello mold, and you know, but they were just silly names because we were talking about him, and you know, they're talking about Bird 6, and I'm like, what's that? Is that the Jello looking thing? You know, so I gave them my names, and they stuck with them like they did at Los Alamos.
So the sport model, you got to know that one pretty well, though. You got to see.
Yeah, it's the only one I can say hands-on, I touched, I walked in, you know, that I can say. For all the other ones could have been holographic projections to fool me, but this is the only one I know is real.
Before we talk about the test, one other thing about the reactor, and I want you to use this example to sort of explain how it worked. You had told me a story about a candle and flame that was basically frozen. Tell me that story and why it gives us an indication of how this thing operated, what power it had.
Well, when we had, you know, after the golf ball incident, there was the benches we had set up. The reactor was not the only thing in the craft. The reactor sits in the center. On the level underneath, there are, well, I should say the reactor, surrounded by the reactor, there are 3 gravity amplifiers, as they were called. Directly under those, there are emitters, which are, probably like 55-gallon drums. There are 3 of them. They hang directly under the emitters, and apparently the way the device works, is the reactor supplies the base gravitational wave and power to the amplifiers, which channel it down to the emitters, which propel the craft. So in addition to the reactor that was out of the craft, one of the emitters was also on the bench. Now, I don't know which craft this came out of. It was not out of the sport model, but they had the reactor operating and the emitter. and Barry had taken a candle and put it about, well, I'd say about 2 feet from the end of the emitter and lit the candle. And he fired up the reactor and he said, go check out the candle. And the flame was there, but it wasn't moving. It was like a picture of it. It was just frozen. And now that makes you think of a lot of things. Oh boy, if it's, we know gravity and time are interrelated and, you know, one is essentially the other. And fine if gravity, if it stopped or slowed time down there, how are photons still being emitted so we can see the light? It should just go black. You know, there a lot of things made absolutely no sense whatsoever with, you know, the science we're familiar with. But these were just things he was showing me as a demonstration that, you know, properties and what it's doing that are just so far beyond what we even know what's going on. And this had nothing to do with the work. I mean, we're just supposed to make another one of these things somehow. So, you know.
So help us understand what this technology means, how advanced it is. You know, it becomes obvious at some point it's from somewhere else. We didn't make it because we're taking it apart to figure out how it works.
Look, a machine that makes gravity is the most important thing that mankind could probably create. Look, we have electromagnets that make magnetic fields. You know, we can make electric fields, you know, with Van de Graaff generators and, you know, God knows what else. But, you know, to make a gravitational field is like the last piece of a missing pie, because when you can, right now the only thing that makes gravity, as far as we know, is mass. You just need a bunch of stuff and it's a property of mass that it just magically pulls in things. You know, we observe gravity, we see what it does, but we really don't know what it is. We can throw some equations together and say, well, it works like this, but we really don't know what's behind it. But if you can make a machine that on demand makes gravity, you know, all the stuff we write science fiction about stops becoming science fiction that afternoon. Then force fields become a reality. You can shift time. I mean, everything becomes possible. It's the most important thing, and here is an operating machine sitting in front of us that makes gravity, and do we really want to be able to make one of those things? I mean, you could make impenetrable fields, you can have propulsion that is mind-boggling as the crafts operate.
It would be the ultimate weapon.
Well, not just the ultimate weapon, but it would really be the ultimate thing. It would catapult mankind forward. And what really sucks is the military is in control of this.
I should, I neglected to mention this during my presentation, but Bob and I have talked about it before. A guy named Ben Rich, who Jim Goodall knows and interviewed several times. Ben Rich was the head of the Skunk Works, which they operated things at Groom Lake, and had been there. They developed the U-2 and SR-71 and Stealth. If anybody would know about advanced technology, it's him and Kelly Johnson. So a lot of people have speculated whether Ben Rich and those guys had incorporated alien technology into some of the advanced airframes that we've got. And I even had a chance to ask him on the day that the Stealth was unveiled out there at Nellis whether any alien stuff was in there. He said no. But other people have talked to him. Jan Harzan, who's here from MUFON, heard a speech that Ben Rich gave at UCLA in which he basically said, we now have the technology to take ET home. We had the calculations slightly wrong, but we can do anything you can imagine. We can travel to the stars. But, he said, the technology is locked up in black budgets and black programs and will never see the light of day. What do you think about that? Well, it's sort of like the same thing you're saying.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what I'm saying. You know, I hope that's not the case, but I mean, how do you pry it out of there? It really, there should be a lot more people working on this. A lot more people.
Well, that's sort of why you became disenchanted with it, but we'll come back to that. Let's talk about the sport model a little bit. You got to see it fly. You got to see it test.
Yeah, once. Once close up. Barry and I were in the lab. We were working. Dennis came in and he said, there's a test flight going on. Bob, why don't you come out here? Barry, you can tag along too. and that's when we came in, side door into the hangar. The craft was already out onto the dry lake bed in front of, or the lake bed proper, but it was out in front of the door. And probably about 2 minutes after I got there, the craft just began to silently lift off the ground, and there was a guy between where I was standing and the door that had a small desk, and there was some sort of transmitter on it, and he was just on a microphone talking apparently to somebody in the craft. And at the time, that again immediately set up a red flag in my mind going, that's not supposed to work either. There is a craft being powered and surrounded by an intense gravitational field. How are the radio waves getting into this thing? It just didn't make sense. But again, very few things did there, and I didn't have much of an opportunity to connect all the dots. But it lifted off the ground silently. There was an obvious high voltage corona discharge. It was beginning to get a little late, but you could see the purple-blue glow. But as soon as it lifted off, 6-10 feet, that dissipated, and it just moved around and sat back down where it was. But it doesn't sound like much, but it was incredibly impressive. There wasn't a sound other than a little hiss when it first took off. But it's a big device. It moved around and sat down, and I mean, I was beaming. It was so cool.
You didn't get to. It didn't fly off to Venus or anything, and people.
No. This is their prize catch here. I mean, no one is going out there and taking it out of the atmosphere and risking it. I mean, that was a big deal.
It could have.
I'm sure. I don't know if they knew how to get it into that mode, but like the test flight data that I saw, they even were very careful on what days to take it above the mountain range where traffic was at its lowest in the surrounding area. So they were very concerned about who could see what and how much they risked the thing moving around. But it was quite a prized possession of theirs.
So you saw the reactor up close, and you saw the craft inside, not only the test, but you got in it.
Yeah, later on it was, again, we have to look at everything. We're trying to figure out how this device works from nothing. So, and its technology, we can barely grasp. So, obviously the placement, orientation of the components and subcomponents might be critical to the operation of it. So I was let in one time. There were several other technicians in there doing their own thing. I don't know what they were working on, but we wanted to see where the reactor was, how it was positioned, where the amplifiers were. And this is when, I described to you, there was access to a lower level to where the emitters were, which was a small hexagon-shaped area that had what I thought was a really creative collapsible doorway. And I guess the only analogy is if you take a 6-pack of beer that comes in bottles and you take out the little divider there, if you stand it up by itself, it's really strong. It'll hold a lot of weight, but you can easily collapse it flat by the side. This is essentially a metal version of that, and it was a hexagon shape with a little hole, and you can walk on it, but you can just put your finger in the hole and pop it, and the whole thing snaps over to where you have a hole you can kind of stick your head upside down in, which is what I did. I just leaned in there, and they wanted me to see how specifically how the arms that held the emitters connected to the bottoms of the amplifiers, and those in themselves were fantastic technology.
Describe